Very, very excited and very honored for Mr. Miller to join us this morning. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Miller through the artist that I assist, John Dowell, when Larry actually picked up Mr. Dowell for representation at his gallery, and was fortunate enough to meet him at his gallery space in Chelsea just earlier this year. But so just to give a little bit of background, I'm not going to give a super exhaustive introduction here because you're not here to listen to me. So Mr. Laurence Miller is the owner of the Laurence Miller Gallery, which was a public space for 36 years up until spring of this year, when he decided to close the gallery space and pivot more into the private space, and now works privately out of his home in Bucks County. Not going to give a super exhaustive kind of list of his resume here, but something that I did find interesting was that, like many of us, or some of us, I should say, did not start out thinking that art was going to be the path. And so he actually switched while in undergrad, going from sociology to art. And I don't know, that was something that really resonated with me personally. But then after attending the University of Wisconsin, then going to the University of New Mexico, and it was during that time actually curated his first exhibition on handmade photo books. And so I thought that was a handful of particularly interesting things. And now, of course, my dog's going to make noise behind me, because why not? Do you mind I'm doing something important here? All right. But I'm not going to be super exhaustive. And so please welcome Mr. Laurence Miller to the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design.
Thanks for having me. Great. You want me to start talking? Yeah. Good morning. I've been trying to make sense of how to talk to you about the issues facing you and opportunities and obstacles as compared to what I faced when I started doing photography around 1972. Probably you weren't even born then. But we had our difficulties then when I was a photo student, in that we were seeing the demise of almost all the magazines that utilized photography to a great extent and employed a lot of photographers around the world, primarily Life magazine, Look magazine. So my professor, a really outstanding person called Cavalier Ketchum at University of Wisconsin, he said, you need new skills, you need additional skills, because you probably can't go out and make a living as a photographer. The whole idea of galleries, I don't think ever appeared on anyone's radar back at that time as an opportunity to make money. So Cavalier said, you know, we're at the art department, there were two different professors teaching typography. Why don't you go make books? So we did. Me and 4 or 5 other grad students, or students, I guess we weren't grads yet. And I made three different books, hand bound, each with original prints mounted in different ways. One was about a boarding house. And I felt sympathetic to these old guys who were living there. And another was a strange book called Hot Dogs and Blimps. For some reason I still can't explain, I was fascinated by roadside hot dog vendors on Long Island, New York, where I had grown up. And I did a very weird book about, and I love blimps, so I kind of did a funny thing about that. And then I did a book called Ozymandias, which was about the Percy Bysshe Shelley poem about, you know, whatever great monuments you build to yourself, they all end up kind of being buried under the desert sand. And so it was about all those really big plastic figures you see throughout the landscape. There are not as many today as there were then, but since I was up in Wisconsin going to school, they were actually, a lot of them were manufactured up near there in Sparta, Wisconsin. So I went up and photographed all these giant hands and cows and all that crazy stuff you see on the highways. Anyway, what Troy was just saying about switching gears, when I turned, I don't know, I'm 70 now, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I have a son in his 20s now, I started thinking about like kind of who I was when I was my son's age. And I realized that when I was young, I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. And I tried to figure out what does that have to do with being a photography dealer? And it clicked in my mind that the shared sensibility was advocacy. I wanted to be an advocate for people who needed my help. And so a gallery is a wonderful format in which to practice that. So that kind of made sense to me. And I'm sure as you all get older, as you reflect back on your life, you'll see things that you say, gee, I never understood why until now. So that happened to me about 10 years ago. It made perfect sense. And how that affected my gallery was that I never was really interested in the stars, the Irving Penns and the Richard Avedons and those guys. I thought they really knew how to be very successful, made great fortunes, great reputations. I was interested in the photographers who no one paid a lot of attention to, but I also had, I thought, a great history of photography education, and I kind of knew what I was doing. So early people that I represented were Ray Metzger from Philadelphia, who just wanted to be left alone. He didn't want to be a star. He wanted to just do his work. And so represented Ray, and then Helen Levitt, another great street photographer who, again, the last thing she would ever want to do would be go to an opening and say hi to people. She just wanted to be left alone. So that's kind of the beginnings of my own personal gallery experience. I was very fortunate, and I'm going to emphasize this to all of you. I was very fortunate to have professors who looked out for me. My first professor, Cavalier Ketchum, we all got together recently, and I really, I really knew I was a real pain in the ass. And he somehow saw through my obnoxiousness and thought I had talent and something to offer. And so he kind of put up with me and encouraged me. And I would not be here today if it wasn't for his ability to just find something in me that he wanted to help pursue, wanted to be an advocate for. So going back also to Troy and John Dowell, who's until this week the most recently added artist to our gallery, and our gallery is now private. COVID pushed me out of being public, but it came at the right time, and I'm really happy to be living in Bucks County and doing business from my home. So John Dowell is a good example, though. John came in the gallery a couple of times, and he was such a wonderful gentleman. He was such a pleasure to talk with. I was intrigued by him, and I was interested by him. And also, politics plays a very significant role in the arts now. Certainly in my lifetime, or in my mind, more than ever. And so having a African-American man or African-American artist in the gallery was something I was excited about doing. I realized I don't want to say neglected it, because the gallery is my art form, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I didn't feel responsible to any part of society. I didn't feel I was neglectful, but obviously in today's world I was. And so John was he just made it so easy to say, hey, you want to do something? Let's collaborate. And we did it. We did a really great show, and it really was the last show the gallery has done and may ever do. I don't know. And another point I want to make about it is, going back years ago, around 1988, when I had a gallery down in Soho section, this guy comes in one day, tall, skinny guy, big portfolio case, and he walks into the print room, throws his portfolio case onto the countertop, and says, here's my work. I want you to look at my work. No one ever wants to look at my work. And I knew immediately I didn't want to either. And the guy was a real ass. So the point of all this is, I don't know, you can laugh at me if you want, but the first bit of advice I have is to be decent to everyone you encounter. Because if you're not, you're going to get dismissed more quickly than you probably ever imagined. So I've experienced people who threw their portfolios at me. I've experienced all kinds of things all around the world. And usually it's the person who I feel I can be a partner with, because I see being an art dealer as a partnership. I'm here for you, you're here for me, we're here for each other. And it's not a one-way street. So that comfort zone. Now, some dealers have much greater comfort zones. They can put up with clients who are real pains in the butt. I never wanted to make money at the expense of having someone demean me, and I've kicked out of my gallery a few wealthy people who just were so impossible and so full, so arrogant, and so full of themselves. I said, I don't want their money enough to put up with their BS. So taking that idea of being a good person, which I think is very important, use that to collaborate. So, I mean, I'm trying to figure out where your kids are at right now. You know, sorry, I'm calling you kids, but anybody under 50 is a kid to me. You know, what are your obstacles? What are your goals? That's all for you to figure out individually, but I'm trying to think of how can I help you achieve them, whatever they are. And so I think it's the spirit of collaboration. Don't think you're better than everybody else. Be the kind of person that someone would be glad to meet. I mean, I get solicited every day of my life by someone wanting to show me their work. Probably 90% of them come in emails, total strangers. The work often has nothing to do with my life or my gallery. I once got a letter from some young Korean artist who said, "Oh, I love your gallery. Everything you do is, please look at my work." And they were like hand-carved birds, it had a lot to do with photography. And then in the gallery, people would walk in all the time. And every now and then someone would walk into the gallery and they just had such a kind vibe, an appreciative vibe. They asked, would it be possible, believing it probably wouldn't, for me to look at their work? And every now and then I would just say yes. So it was really about an interaction. So my first bit of advice, and you may all know it, is just be a good soul, be interactive, be collaborative. So how do you take that somewhere? So I think you got to innovate. I think you should. I mean, I started organizing shows just because I wanted to. And looking back in my childhood, when I was a teenager, I covered my walls with sports pictures. So I love installing pictures. That's really my art form. And my former man cave out here in the house, in the barn, is now my studio, and I'm doing an installation. And I work on it every other day or so. And it's kind of my autobiography, visual autobiography of everything I've loved and collected. And I'm just doing an installation, and probably someday I'll take it down and just do another one. I love doing that. So if there are things that you really enjoy doing regarding your photography or your video, find a way to expand it or employ it or make it available. So, and try to collaborate. So I think point one, really, relationships are really, really essential. You have tools we never dreamed of. We were making handmade books. Now you can do blurb. Everybody has a handmade book, it seems, these days. I think they're more expensive to make than they ought to be, but you don't have to make it hardcover, and you don't have to find ways to cut costs. But I think having a physical book that you can put in someone's hands is valuable. I think living off a screen, which is increasingly the norm, is still not. I don't like reading reports on my computer. I'd really rather sit down and at a table. But you do what you're comfortable with, but try to take advantage of also, oh God, I remember this. It's just something I learned a long time ago, and then I dismissed it the day I learned it. It was about journalism, and I remember reading somewhere the key to a good journalist is know who the audience is. And I thought, no, I'm my audience. I'm not going to do this for somebody else. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think maybe it has new meaning for you that, and also, I don't know if any of you heard Obama give an amazing talk last night. I mean, it brought me to tears because it was just so much about what we've lost these last 4 years. But Obama talked about his daughters and how political advertising is worthless to his daughters. They don't watch TV. They don't watch advertisements on TV. See their live stream, or they're copying it. So you got a whole set of tools here that you can use. And but the point is know who your audience is. So if you're saying, I want to get me an established gallery in New York, think about who is the established gallery owner. I mean, if it's someone who's 60 or 70 or 80 years old or 40 years old, every generation is going to have a different sensibility. So know who your audience is. If you want to reach out to somebody, understand who they are and maybe how they think. I don't know what your opportunities are in Lancaster, but I actually was looking on the map this morning to remind myself where you are. Before I get specifically about that, I would say volunteer where you can. Be helpful. Is there somewhere where you can intern for free and help somebody? Is there a little space in the local library where maybe you could say, hey, we'd like to put up a little show about something, or be creative. Find physical. It's funny I'm saying this because I gave up a physical space to be here in my house, but find a way to create something physical that other people can enjoy. I don't know. It seems crazy now, right? We can't go anywhere. So save that idea till we're in a safer planet. So here's a funny bit of advice I'd also give. I call it Google yourself. And by that, I mean, we all think we're special. We all think we're unique. We all think we've got something figured out. So whatever that criteria is that you feel about yourself or your work, your position in life, try and figure out the 4 key ideas of it and Google them. The point is to see how others see themselves, maybe similarly to how you might see yourself. We're all unique, but we're all common. We all share so many things together. So if you say, well, I'm interested in Amish horse-drawn carts in the age of digital technology, which is an idea I just thought of this morning, which kind of fascinates me. Maybe that's where you start. Maybe you Google that. See if anybody else has dealt with it. Anybody has written about it. Anybody has made pictures of it. It's very important, in a sense, to know who shares what you share, who's preceded you. A lot of us, we all think we're inventing the wheel, and then we realize that somebody else invented it a long time before us. When I was a student, we were just, my roommate and I, we would sit on the floor and we'd go through Robert Frank's The Americans page by page, dissecting it, trying to figure out why the sequence is what it was and all that stuff. And then we'd go out and try and be Robert Frank. I went out and tried to be everybody you could possibly imagine. And it took a long time before I found me as a picture maker. But you got to know who precedes you. You got to know who's had your ideas before you. And you got to build on them. Another thing is when I joined a gallery in 1974, I was still an active photographer, and I was being exposed to everybody. The gallery represented so many great people. For some reason, I said to myself, I want to make pictures of today with a vision of then, of now. So what impressed me, there were 2 photographers who impressed me, Roger Merton and Mark Cohen. And Mark Cohen was somewhere out in Pennsylvania, actually, maybe Harrisburg or somewhere. And they were both starting to use a flash, sometimes detached from the camera. And they were shooting from the hip and was very kind of, spontaneous. And they were doing a little of it in color. And I thought, so what I started photographing were platform shoes, which were the rage back then, certainly in the cities. They were really crazy, surreal objects to me. Platform shoes, using a camera handheld, like at the waist or at my knees with a flash, and even some camera motion. That was the vocabulary that I thought was of that moment. And so I had precedence in these 2 photographers, and it was a way that I thought I could speak about my time so that my pictures would be timeless because they'd be of my moment. I tried for years to photograph Walker Evans' old barns, and then I realized they were even old when Walker photographed them in the 30s. So what good is an even further deteriorated barn in 1975? It was like going backwards. So I don't recommend going backwards too much. Another note I made to express is the phrase imitate and deviate. And that's kind of what I was just speaking about whose work out there excites you. And try to understand why and maybe build on it or challenge it, but understand precedence. And in this digital age, everything's out there. You can find anything. A couple more points, and then I'm happy to hear what you think. I was thinking about Lancaster, and I don't know if there are Amish video artists or Amish photographers. I'm sorry to be naive about that, but what occurred to me was what little understanding I have of the Amish is kind of a desire to maintain old standards, old kind of simplicity of life, and not cave into all the technologies and changes that might alter their philosophy of how to live. But I thought of the idea of Amish and digital, and I thought if I was a student right now out there, or somebody said, "Hey, Larry, come do a residency for a month," I would see if somebody, an Amish farmer, would let me attach a digital video camera to the back of his horse-drawn cart. That's what I would do, to see if it's possible. One, to see what the world looked like from their vantage point. So that's just my crazy thought. Another thing I realized in the map is you're not that far from Gettysburg, and Gettysburg, isn't it? It's so interesting. I've never been there. I must admit, I'm really remiss. I've never been to Gettysburg, and I've never been to Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. And now that they're both within a few hours of New Hope, Pennsylvania, we're going to get there this spring. But Gettysburg looms larger and larger now. American monuments, obviously, we're revisiting, and how we represent our past, our heroes. So if I was out there, I'd somehow want to go to Gettysburg and see what the heck I could figure out about Gettysburg and how it addresses today's life and issues. So the last thought, which I think is the best, most important one is, and I know whenever classes come to the gallery, I say this, is don't ever talk yourself out of a good idea. Believe in your idea, no matter how weird it is, crazy it is, disruptive it is, unpopular it is. If you feel in your heart it's a good idea, don't ever talk yourself out of it. I'm open now. Anybody want to say anything? I'm all yours.
Hi, Laurence. This is David Johansson. I'm a faculty member here at PCA&D. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it very much. I thought I'd give you a little bit of context about some of our students. I'd say majority of our students come from maybe the region of central Pennsylvania, western Maryland, parts of New Jersey. So it's a fairly regional school. Most of us have had galleries in our experience, but they tend to be maybe a smaller, like in Lancaster, we have a row of galleries, and they cater to a couple of different markets. One would be kind of more of a gift shop model, and the other one is artists who own their own space and put up their own paintings in the window. So it might be helpful for some of us to understand what an established gallery in New York looked like in its heyday, to understand what you were doing and the role of the gallery in the system of, you know, sort of, it's a different echelon of gallery, and maybe just that context could help some of us.
Well, the first kind of contemporary gallery that opened in New York was Witkin Gallery, started by a fellow named Lee Witkin from New Jersey. And I remember visiting it, and before I went to Light Gallery opened a few years after Witkin, and Light and Witkin were the two major operations in New York for photography. And Witkin was like a house, floor of a house with a back deck, and it was a real meeting place for people. So for the photographers and curators, that's maybe the first thing it was like a clubhouse, a place that you could gather and hang out together and celebrate photography. Light Gallery opened a few years later on Madison Avenue in Manhattan, on a street that was filled with very major galleries. Some are still there today. And it functioned as another clubhouse where people would come and photographers would come to meet one another and share their ideals or whatever, share their alcohol, whatever it was. But and it was wonderful to join that. I think maybe why I'm successful not having a gallery is that we can be digital now. We if you have a storefront, I mean, I really respect that, admire that, where you would take a small space and put your art or your friend's art in it. I don't know if you can reach an audience large enough to achieve an advantage, to achieve a goal. Whereas the digital toolbox is amazing, the platforms are amazing. On the other hand, I'm inundated with people's platform. Everyone, you know, it's like a barrage. I get 20, 30 every day, 30 or 40 barrages of this. I don't know. It's much more than I can handle. But I think having a meeting place is important. But maybe that's what you have anyway. So did I answer your question? I'm kind of not sure. I mean, I see that in New York too. A lot of people, artists, are doing galleries in their living rooms in Brooklyn and all these places, and they get some press and they get a little action. Maybe the key is that the friends you need to have, sounds a little opportunistic, are the curator friends, and not just the artist friends. Because who's going to take it a little further is going to be someone who says, you know, I want to organize shows. I mean, that's what I did. I started organizing shows back in college just because I wanted to do it. I didn't know it was going to take me anywhere. So anyway, that's all I can come up with right now for that question.
Hi, Larry. It's Eric again. You know, the students here, they were born in 2000, right? So they don't really know the history of the photography market, and they don't know that you were one of the very few galleries in the 1980s, along with Lieberman and Saul and Howard Greenberg, you know, showing photography and how important that was for a photographer who was coming up, that there were outlets to go and see the work and also aspire to. And so if you can just talk a little bit about your history as a gallerist in relationship to the photography market in New York City from the 1980s on up.
Yeah, well, okay. So I worked at Light Gallery from 1974 to 1980. I quit. I wanted to be a photographer, and through the help of Aaron Siskind, I got a teaching slot one autumn at University of Texas, San Antonio. Just did whatever I wanted to do. They gave me great freedom to do whatever I wanted to do, and I didn't photograph much. So that was a bit of a downer to realize maybe I really didn't have what it took to be a photographer, because I knew Harry Callahan, I knew Aaron Siskind, I knew Andre Kertész, and these people did it every day of their life, and I wasn't living and breathing it. So if you're not living and breathing it, but you feel like you got that juice in you to do something, think about how else you can do something with it and maybe not be behind the camera yourself. I still photograph though, and I still photograph almost every day. Now I'm photographing all the news on TV for whatever reason, I don't know. Therapy, I think. But yeah, back in those days, there were a few more than three of us, and every one of us was ourselves. So Howard Greenberg was much more a humanist-based gallery. He liked the New York school of street photography. I was much more kind of the Ray Metzger modernist kind of person. I liked people making pictures that were about more formal elements and that sort of thing. So Howard and I, we were good friends. We were very different sides of the same camera, so to speak. And then Julie Saul was doing her thing with her philosophy. She had a little more art training than some of the others of us had. Then Yancey Richardson came along later. Peter McGill, several of us who were at Light Gallery formed our own galleries. Ultimately, we got eclipsed by the art world. And more and more, the art gallery started taking on artists who made photographs, or even we might call photographers. So suddenly we started losing momentum to the bigger galleries who now had a person on their staff who appreciated photography. And I think now it's even almost more of a crisis now when you see the biggest galleries, Gagosian, maybe like Alex Soth is now at Gagosian, and he's been there for a few years. And now Zwerner now is showing Arbus, and actually Lorraine Augustine is doing a Friedlander show through Jeffrey Frankel. So I think the specialist is going to become increasingly extinct. I'm not sure it's bad. I just think I would show more paintings if I knew what the hell I was talking about, but I don't. I did show a painting and a painter and a sculptor back in my earliest shows. And I didn't know. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I didn't. So, but you know, anyone can be a gallerist. That's kind of a cool thing. And so, if you could find it, if the economic plight is affecting Lancaster, find a little place. And you know, it's really hard now. I was going to say make it a magical meeting place, like once a month it would be an event, but you're kind of prohibited from doing that. So it's frustrating. I'm frustrated for you because I think my best ideas are not applicable now. They're yesterday's ideas. So you have to take what you've got and be really expansive with it. I don't know, do virtual events, or again, like kind of Googling yourself. I would say, see, like look at who's doing what you want to do, and look at what they're doing and see if you can figure out what about it attracts you and how you could do it. And you know, if one of you is really good at marketing, figure out how to say, hey, I'm gonna get you, our classmates, we're gonna get in front of somebody who's gonna pay attention to us. I don't know if that's any help at all, but for those of you who are, you know, in your teens or early 20s, it's such a different world than I grew up in. And where we had our challenges, you have much greater challenges right now, like social interaction. It's a frightening time. So, but don't ever be a victim of your circumstances. You have to, you know, for me, going private was great. Everybody thinks, oh, but you lost this, you lost that. You know what? I gained freedom. Every week I play golf with a friend of mine, a retired friend of mine. I meet interesting people. No one has a clue what I do. But I'm here, I'm in my guest bedroom, it's my little office, and I'm free to be creative. And I'm also able to take advantage of 40 years of contacts and friends. So that's really, really been very, very helpful. That's all I can say to that question. Sorry.
Thank you. No, it was very helpful.
Anybody else want to ask me anything?
You said you like started as a gallerist, and then you stopped for a while, and then you started it back up again. What made you want to start it up again?
Well, let's go back to the beginning. So after I left Light Gallery and I went and taught and I came back, I didn't think I could make a living as a photographer. So I made the perhaps wrong decision that I could be a dealer because I had 6 years of experience in a gallery. And so my first letterhead was Laurence G. Miller, Photography Investment Counselor, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say these days, but that's who I was. And I reached out to all the museums I knew. So I would go on a road trip and I'd visit the curator at Yale, the curator at Boston, the curator at the Worcester Art Museum. We would do road trips, right? Photographs were small. You take a print case or two, get in the car, you travel for a day or two, and you come home and sell 8 pictures and you were happy, you know, it was simple. So then I needed a gallery. Once I had a couple of good artists, I needed to have a space, and that was the beginning of it. And I did it for 36 years. And I have a lot to show for it. I have a lot of debt as a result of it. So it was not necessarily an easier path, but it was a great path. So now I'm private again. The interesting thing is I started in a gallery, then I started as a private dealer. Then I decided I needed a space. And after 36 years of a space, I decided I don't need a space. And if I have an idea or an opportunity, I can find a space, especially now. So if you guys put together a project and I said, wow, these kids are out there, you guys are great, I could find a place to have it happen in New York. I know I can. Whether it required me to pay somebody to let me use their space, or there's so many empty spaces right now. My space is empty. I'm sure if I gave my landlord 10 grand, I said, hey, Walter, could I have my space back for 3 weeks? He'd say it's available now. Here are the keys. So I don't want to be encumbered with a space, but my mind is completely unencumbered. I have freedom. I love it. Does that help? But you got to do what you want to do. It's your thing. It's your life. You got to define it, be smart about it, create opportunities, take advantages, look at your digital toolbox, look at all the stuff that other people are doing and figure out what feels right to you and what feels silly. And some people make beautiful presentations. Some people make horrible presentations. My assistant keeps telling me, Larry, you got to redesign your platform for people who are looking on their handheld phone. They're interacting with your gallery on their phone. But we do an email blast every week called Photograph of the Week, and you should Google the gallery, and one of the headings on the menu is Photograph of the Week, and we're up to 111 weeks now we've been doing it, and it's been a very effective tool for us. And I saw some of my colleagues started doing their version of it, and none of them did it as well. None of them sustained it either. It was interesting how they did it for 5 weeks, and I don't know, they ran out of ideas. So we use it as an artistic tool, a political tool, a marketing tool. I'm dying to do a political thing next week, and I'm just wondering how many clients I will alienate if I come out and express how I feel about our current president. So I'm trying not to shoot myself in the foot, but I certainly have things I'd like to say right now. Next.
Laurence, I had a question. I was wondering, I'm an admissions counselor and alum of the photography and video department at PCA&D. I actually had 2 questions. Give me a second. For the students now, I know it can be intimidating going into galleries or asking for space in galleries, or just understanding how to get in contact with galleries in general. So as a young artist, or as a gallerist, how would you say the students could go about actually getting into gallery spaces or go about contacting galleries? Then my second question, you mentioned in the beginning about representation within your own gallery in the last show you had. I was wondering about how important representation was within your own space, your own gallery space, and if that affected like your business or anything else like that.
Okay, good questions. I think being an artist and going to galleries is so daunting. I'm impressed that anyone even tries it. I think it's probably a very depressing experience, because you're lucky if you can get a no as an answer. You're lucky if you can get an answer. I don't think people do enough homework, though. To walk into my gallery with something that is so irrelevant to my aesthetic is a waste of time. I have very well-meaning clients, and a lot of my clients are friends. They'll say, "Oh, my friend's daughter, she's a student at RISD or something. Oh, she makes this great work, and would you take a look?" And it's so often it's just horrible or just completely not what I'm about. I mean, I rarely show portraits. I'm not into fashion. I'm not into flowers or all that stuff, and I'm only into what I'm into. And that has to keep changing, like you as an artist or as a teacher. It has to evolve. So I can't always be Ray Metzger and Helen Levitt. That's done. Interestingly, I still live off of those 2 artists to a great extent. So I think you got to do research. So, but again, God, it's hard now. You can't go into, you can drive into New York, if they'll even let you get into New York right now. Pennsylvania's getting on the list, close to getting back on the list. You got to, what do you take a field trip? This is what you do, right? A field trip, get a van, 8 kids and a professor. You drive into New York and spend the day, and you go to 3 museums and 12 galleries, have a nice lunch and drive home. I think that's the way to do it. When I was a student in Madison, Wisconsin, our professor would take us down to the Art Institute of Chicago, and we'd meet with the new young curator, and he actually bought all of our handmade books. So it's maybe the only museum I'm in was from my student days. I think the more you prepare yourself, the better your odds of finding success. I also think, though, amongst your friends, is one of you more curatorial or more spokesman-like than the others? And maybe that person can be the go-between. I'm never interested in talking to an agent. When somebody says, "Oh, I'm the agent for blah blah blah," and you Google blah blah blah, and blah 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 is like a hip LA music scene photographer. if this person's too busy to talk to me, I'm too busy to talk to him. So I don't want to talk to their agents. But that's different than having a classmate who says, you know, my friend or my sister's friend, she's now, you know, a junior at David's Werner. Well, there, man, that's golden. And maybe you say, so how does the Zwerner team look at new work? So a lot of it's just research, and so, which I think you're better off spending more time doing research and then going after a few opportunities that seem to have some potential than to just blanket the world and walk in and walk out. And now people don't walk in with portfolios. It's always digital. Here's my website. That's not a bad way to proceed and say, here's my card. Would you look at my website? But just know that we get bombarded. We do get nice people who come in and make an effort and say, you know, I really admire your gallery. And I have people who come in for years, and when they finally ask, I generally say, sure, because I know they've come and they've looked. They care about what I'm showing. You have to prove to the person you want to show your work that you care about them. In a way, it's not about you. What are you going to bring to David Werner that's going to make him more successful? So a lot of it's just kind of understanding the mechanics of how it all works, and everyone's different. But I think if you can have someone organize, do something, here's a good. I remember we did Paris Photo, big art fair in Paris every year for years, and there was this one dealer from Helsinki who created the Helsinki School. And he did this. You should look this up. All of you out there should Google the Helsinki School. This guy took his students and he marketed them as a brand. And they had a big stand. He must have had money. A lot of the foreign European countries, they would underwrite creative efforts on schools, and they would help artists. I know in Holland, almost any artist can get their work shipped to America for free. Let's say they help out. We're the stingiest country in the world when it comes to the arts. So the Helsinki School became this thing, and they produced books, and they did art fairs, and they had the biggest booth, and it was a circus, but it became a brand. Now that's pretty brilliant marketing. This guy, Tim. So maybe there's the Lancaster brand. Why not? Most people have heard of Lancaster, strangely enough, more than Harrisburg, more than York. So maybe there's someone amongst you or your classmates or one of your professors who says, you know, I had a little experience doing that. Let's try and market ourselves in a way, and let's see, you know, look at it as a 4-step ladder. Let's do something locally. Let's try to get press. Let's try to, does someone know somebody with an art magazine in New York, and they'll have somebody who'll say, oh, we're featuring out of town exhibitions right now. You know, I think kind of just something like that. I hope that's helpful. It's very political now. As a young black man, you have an advantage. Baltimore Museum of Art only will buy art by women now. Institutions are changing. It's an amazingly necessary, long overdue correction. I'm sorry to make you, I don't mean to make you feel like you're corrective, but you're having an opportunity that you were denied, perhaps. So it's a changing world, and it always is changing. So now some people are going to have an advantage, some people are going to not. I never thought about those things when I was doing my own thing. I just was doing my own thing. But now you can't do your own thing without being sensitive to larger issues that are coming to the fore, and correctly so.
Thank you.
I hope something in there you can use. Next.
Larry, one of the things that we are planning to do is we curated an exhibition of our students' work and alumni and faculty based around the environment. And we were going to exhibit last summer at Governor's Island and have one of the houses or 6 months. And that's still in the offing once COVID-19 ends. We hope to be able to do that. So that's one way that we are planning to kind of just put our flag up in New York City. It's exciting.
There's a lot of foundations out there now supporting a lot of good things. There's a tremendous amount of wealth out there. And a good part of it is in well-intended people that I agree with. And I look around for environmental foundations that support environmental issues and somehow see what you can do for them, kind of put it that way. To say, hey, we're organizing a show, and I think our show supports your values, instead of saying, hey, will you support us? So I would always, I think Google's an amazing tool. Look for, I just happened by chance, I got a phone call from the wife of the founder of Starbucks. She bought a picture from me. The phone rings one day and it's Sherry Schultz. So I sold her something. She said, well, I'm thinking about maybe John Dowell for the foundation. So I'm trying to understand what this foundation is. I know there's a lot of money in environmental issues. Who are the players in the environmental world? And somehow offer them something. Always make it for the other person. I think always make it for the other person. Here's how I can help you. And then you show that you know what they're doing. You show that you care about what they're doing, and you share values with them. And maybe they could say, hey, if the Governor's Island thing doesn't work out, there's other spaces. There's another institution, or there's a private museum that could do. There's things. So that sounds good. I hope that comes to pass. And again, the cards are stacked against us right now because of the virus. So, and I don't know how long it's going to take to clear out. But Governor's Island's getting a lot of attention, a lot of play. It's no longer this place I've never been to. It's a place I want to go to.
That's excellent advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope I can help. Anybody else? I'm available this morning as long as this Zoom works, so feel free. Hey, those of you who aren't saying anything, if you were in my gallery right now, I'd pick on you. So if you're out there sitting in on listening and you're not saying anything, let's go. Silence will do you nothing. Speak up. Feel uncomfortable. Let's go.
I was kind of curious. You said you're in Bucks County now. I was just curious if you've done anything around there, because I'm also from that area.
Yeah.
So like anything recently?
I want to. The only thing I've done recently is through a friend of a friend, I got invited to a private gallery opening a few Sundays ago in a house that was like 10 houses down the road from me. I had no idea behind this gate. I didn't even see the gate. Was this very wealthy woman who converted a barn and has a gallery, and they were doing like Sunday afternoon gatherings. And I felt so much like I wanted to do that I talked to the woman and I said, next year, maybe when I'm finally ready to do something, why don't we organize, they have house tours and barn tours out here and garden tours. Let's do an art tour. I don't want to be open to the public and sit in a space in Lambertville across the river and have 12 tourists come in and say, oh, $3,000 for a little black and white photo. That's not how I want to spend my days. But I would love to be part of a group of exhibitors that we do a day where anyone can come in and spend their 10 minutes, have a free glass of wine, and enjoy the social aspect and the sharing of the art. So I love doing shows. That is deep in me, and I will find a way to do it. And I'm not sure to what audience or to what extent there would be an audience, but my man cave, now studio, is going to be something within a year. I'm going to do something. I'm either going to promote it myself and create a Zoom tour. I may take people on a tour, a virtual tour, or I may open it on a Sunday. Maybe I'll talk to some other people and say, why don't we on this one Sunday in April, we'll do the New Hope Soulberry Gallery Walk, and I'll meet 10 people, So I definitely want to keep doing stuff, but I'm doing it for me right now. And I send pictures of my installation to my friends. because I'm so excited about my new purchase. Spent $13 at a flea market the other day and got 3 things that fit perfectly in my diverse collections. And many of my collections are one. I have like one of something. And then I have 2 of it. So how's that? Do shows, do things. You know, use the media. Do something. I don't know. Take an empty store window. Call a landlord. Say your store's empty. You know, can we paint on your? We won't be offensive, but we may be a little political. Can we paint on your glass window for 30 days, and we'll take it down? And at the end of 30 days, no one will know it was there. But you notified all the newspapers in the region. You find out who the out-of-town editors for the New York Times or the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you get media coverage. And if you're really slick, you get somebody with a camera to come out, and you do something. I think I think we're all sharing a pain right now for different reasons. There's a pain. We're all sharing something, and people want to talk about it. So there's a deep, soulful chord that you can strike, and someone will listen.
So do you think right now with everything that's going on, like we should lean a little bit more towards like online exhibitions instead of like actual gallery spaces, since everything is for the most part closed or limited?
Well, we've started doing online exhibitions. I'm not sure they've been positive in that we've established relationships with some younger artists. I'm not sure if we've made many sales from them, but the problem with that is there's millions of them now. There's so much. It's like a traffic jam. So it's such a good tool that there's a million of them. And I don't know how you rise above it, other than you have a high-end PR team and you pay someone to get you above it all. So we have online shows. I get 10 emails a day. If it's not an art fair online, it's a this online, it's a that online. I don't know. I imagine there are people out there looking for that, or editors or writers. I don't know. That's the trouble. It's so good. There's too many of it.
Yeah, because over the summer, I looked at possibly getting into some gallery exhibitions, and I had gone around Lancaster to see what all they had. A lot of the galleries are specifically like fine art, and I got a lot of no's. So I'm like trying to figure out what steps to take.
Yeah, this may sound naive. I mean, I'm 72 years old. I feel naive, but maybe just do your own thing. Just create your own show. Find a sympathetic landlord. Create your own show. I don't know. Create something. Create something that gets people. I don't want to say get people angry. I'm not sure that's a good approach.
Catch people's attention.
What's that?
Like catch people's attention.
Yeah, or I mean, right now the whole emerging out of COVID or isolation is such a big theme. I see an awful lot of magazine stories, and some of them are. I was just reading a thing from the New York Times Sunday magazine about a month ago. I finally opened it this morning. Was about 3 people who went hiking in the Tetons just to find themselves again, and it was exciting. It was scary what they did, and they were really professional mountain climbers and stuff. But we're all feeling this need. Hopefully, we are, and it can be touched in an interesting way. So, but Lancaster, you got to start local in a way. But Lancaster's nowhere in the sense of New York. It's how do you get an editor at Art Forum to pay attention to you? How do you get a young curator? I think you got to find connections to who of your peers or your peers up plus 5 years have gotten their foot in the door, and how can you connect with them? So as a young artist, see, I can call Adam Weinberg at the Whitney. He's the director of the Whitney. We've known each other for 40 years. I can call Adam and say hi, talk to him. I got the head curator at the Whitney to come look at my work for an installation I wanted to do at the Whitney. I got that courtesy. I got turned down, but at least I had the courtesy of, that's what friends are for in a way. I still think they missed out on a good idea, but I'm so wrong politically that I understand. And the Whitney's got their own problems. But, if you know somebody or somebody's got a sister or brother that's interning somewhere, or I think you can, again, maybe I'm being naive, but just create something. If nothing else, it'll be part of your own soul. Like I did a show, there was a bookstore in Albuquerque where I was going to school after Wisconsin, Quivera Bookshop and Gallery. And I was really interested because of my old professor saying, make handmade books. I curated a show about handmade photography books, maybe the first ever, I don't know. And I had other great professor at New Mexico who lent me his library. So I had, original Fox Talbot books. And there's great stuff. I did a show and I actually Googled it the other day because I couldn't figure out the dates. And there it was. It was written about in the, Albuquerque Inquirer or something in whatever year. So just do it. Just do it. Find a way to do it. And try to get people to pay attention to it and invite the right people. Who's the arts editor at the local newspaper? I don't know. I guess that's what I would try and do is I try to, in New Hope, we have a little local newspaper. I would take out an ad. I can't imagine an ad in the New Hope Gazette is going to cost me anything more than $250. So take out an ad in your local paper and say it's a community event. Spin it so that it's about for everybody. So that you're giving your community something. Try to always make it be about for someone else. I think that's really people want to be helped and want to share. I think we enjoy doing that. So it's not that I have an issue and I'm this and I'm that and I want this. It's like, hey, I want to gather some people and we have something to say that I think our community can relate to. Where can we do it? Who can help us accomplish it? If nothing else, you and your friends will come together in a deeper way, and you'll have that your whole life. Isn't that naive and idealistic? Give it a shot.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who else hasn't said anything? You don't want me to be your professor because I'll just pick on you if you don't say anything.
They already do that.
So I think we have time for one more question, and sadly, I think we need to wrap up the conversation for today. So we got time for one more. Make it worth it.
Let's go. From anybody. So I'll ask the question. So what do you folks want to achieve for yourself? You're studying art. It's not a very applicable profession. It's not digital technology or something. So what is it that you want to get out of all this? I'm waiting.
It's a fantastic question.
I feel like it sounds cheesy when I say it, but when I would think about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life and what I wanted to get out of it was I always wanted to have a career that I could tell my kids I was happy that I was doing it. So I guess just making money from being a photographer would be enough for me, as long as I could look at my kids and not be like, oh, how was work? It was work. Work was work. I want my work to mean something.
I have a lot of clients when my gallery was on 57th Street who would come in any lunch break they can from board meetings. A lot of them were attorneys, investors, and they just loved that I could be in my own little universe that they could come visit because they were too busy making a lot of money. They weren't just making a lot of money. They were doing their passion, whether it was to practice law or to be an investor, to find their own success. But there's something special about doing it as an artist, but it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to, you know, a lot of artists lived without much money their whole life. That was the risk. That's why I stopped being an artist and wanted to be an art dealer. I didn't want to end up empty-handed. I'm not sure it was the right choice, but you know, what's his name? Great artist from LA. I'll think of it in a minute. He said he loved teaching because teaching gave him the freedom to do his art, and it didn't matter if his art was good or not, or was well received or not. He made his whatever a professor makes these days. So there's a way, maybe if you put all your marbles in one bag and you know you're going to use your inner passion to make your living, that may be counterproductive. I don't think very many make a living, and you only hear about the ones, you know, making the millions and billions. That's, yeah. Well, you just have to tell your kids will know whether you lived a good life. They'll love you for yourself if you're a good person, whatever you do. So all we need is love. That's what the Beatles said. All right, folks.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. No, this was fantastic. So thank you. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in. Maybe we can do like collective thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Super, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you as well for making me reflect and think about these things too. And I really enjoyed it. Anytime, I'm always available.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
And hey, Troy.
Yes.
If you want to put together a little portfolio of your students' work to put in front of me, a couple of examples of each, please go ahead and do it.
I would be happy to do so.
I'd be happy to look.
That would be fantastic. You heard it, everyone.
Okay.
All right.
Remember, don't
Awesome.
talk yourself out of a good idea.
Perfect.
And vote.
Thank you.
Gotta vote. Be well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks a lot.